John Cena wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished his last set of push-ups. It was almost 9 o'clock at night, and his home gym in Florida was quiet except for the sound of his breathing. He loved these late evening workouts. They helped him clear his mind after long days of filming and appearances. He walked over to the water cooler and filled his bottle. Through the large windows of his gym, he could see the dark sky outside. Stars were beginning to appear, scattered across the black canvas above. John took a long drink of water and looked out at his property. The backyard stretched far into the distance, ending where the wild forest began. That was when he saw it. A flash of light in the sky. Then another. And another. John stopped drinking and stared. At first he thought it might be a plane. But the light was not moving across the sky like a plane would. It was staying in one place. And the flashing had a pattern to it. 3 short flashes. Then 3 long flashes. Then 3 short flashes again. John's heart began to beat faster. He put down his water bottle and moved closer to the window. The flashes came again. Same pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. His mind raced back to his childhood. His father had been in the military. So had his grandfather. They had taught John many things when he was young. One of those things was Morse code. It was an old way of sending messages using dots and dashes, short signals and long signals. 3 short, 3 long. 3 short meant something very specific. SOS. Someone was asking for help. John felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm Florida night. He pressed his face closer to the window, trying to see better. The flashes came from somewhere in the forest behind his property. They were faint but clear enough to see in the darkness. He grabbed his phone from the bench and ran outside to his back porch. The night air was humid and thick. Crickets chirped loudly in the grass. John held up his phone and opened the flashlight app, pointing it toward the forest. But his light was too weak to reach that far. The flashes came again. SOS. Someone out there needed help badly. John's fingers moved quickly across his phone screen. He dialed 911. The line rang twice before a woman answered. 911, what is your emergency? My name is John Cena. I live at 4750 Oak Ridge Road in Tampa. I can see distress signals coming from the forest behind my property. Someone is flashing SOS in Morse code. There was a pause. Sir, can you repeat that? Someone is signaling SOS from the woods. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short. That's a distress call. Someone needs help out there. Okay, sir. Stay on the line. I'm dispatching emergency services to your location now. Can you see anything else? Any smoke or fire? John squinted into the darkness. No smoke. Just the light signals. They keep repeating every minute or so. Sir, please stay at your house. Emergency responders are on their way. They should arrive in about 30 to 40 minutes. 40 minutes? John felt his stomach drop. That's too long. Someone could be dying out there. Sir, I understand, but it's dangerous to go into the forest at night. Please wait for the professionals. John looked at the forest again. The flashes came once more. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Whoever was out there was still conscious enough to keep signaling. But for how long? I understand, John said. But even as he spoke, he was already moving back into his house. Please stay on the line, sir. I will. John put the phone on speaker and set it on his kitchen counter. He moved quickly through his house, gathering supplies. He grabbed a powerful flashlight from his garage. He found his first aid kit under the bathroom sink. He pulled on a pair of hiking boots and a long-sleeved shirt to protect against branches and thorns. His phone sat on the counter, the 911 operator occasionally asking if he was still there. I'm here, he called back each time. But John knew what he had to do. 40 minutes was too long. If someone was injured badly enough to be flashing SOS signals, they might not have 40 minutes. They might not even have 20. He thought about his family's military background. His father had always taught him one important lesson. When someone needs help, you help them. You don't wait. You don't hesitate. You act. John grabbed his phone from the counter. I'm going in, he told the operator. Sir, please don't. Wait for emergency services. I can't wait. I'll keep my phone on. You can track my location, right? Yes, but sir, someone's life might depend on this. I have to try. John ended the call but kept his phone's GPS on and in his pocket. He knew the operator could still track his location. He took a deep breath and looked at the supplies he had gathered. Flashlight, first aid kit, phone, water bottle. It would have to be enough. He stepped out into his backyard and turned on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the grass and trees ahead. The edge of the forest was about 200 feet from his house. Beyond that, the trees grew thick and wild. John started walking. His boots crunched on the grass. The night sounds grew louder as he approached the forest. Frogs croaked near a small pond to his left. An owl hooted somewhere in the trees. He reached the tree line and paused. The forest looked dark and uninviting. Branches twisted together overhead, blocking out most of the starlight. The undergrowth was thick with bushes and fallen logs, but then he saw it again. Deeper in the forest, perhaps half a mile away, the flashes came. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Someone was still out there, still signaling, still hoping for rescue. John took another deep breath and stepped into the forest. Branches immediately grabbed at his clothes. Thorns scratched against his arms despite his long sleeves. He pushed forward, holding his flashlight high to see the path ahead. The ground was uneven, covered with roots and rocks. John had to watch every step to avoid tripping. His flashlight beam swept back and forth, showing him twisted trees and thick bushes. The forest was much denser than it looked from his house. He stopped after a few minutes and looked up. Through gaps in the trees, he tried to spot the signal again. He waited, counting seconds in his head, then it came. The flashes, clearer now that he was closer. They were definitely coming from deeper in the forest, somewhere to his right. John adjusted his direction and kept walking. Sweat began to form on his forehead again, but this time it was not from exercise. It was from the humid night air and the effort of pushing through the thick forest. A branch snapped under his foot, the sound sharp in the quiet night. John froze for a moment, listening. He heard nothing but the usual forest sounds. No voices calling for help. No sounds of struggle or pain. That worried him. If someone was injured badly enough to need help but could not even call out, they must be in terrible shape. He pushed on, moving faster now. The flashlight beam bounced as he walked, creating dancing shadows on the trees around him. His boots sank into soft earth. The smell of damp leaves and soil filled his nose. John checked his phone. He had been walking for about 10 minutes. The signal had to be close now. He stopped again and turned off his flashlight, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. He waited, counting in his head. 30 seconds, 40, 50. Then he saw them. The flashes much closer now, maybe only 100 yards away. They came from behind a hill covered in trees. 3 short flashes. 3 long. 3 short, someone was still there. Still fighting. Still hoping. John turned his flashlight back on and began to climb the hill. His legs burned from the effort. His hands grabbed at tree trunks to pull himself up the steep slope. Loose dirt slid under his boots. He was coming. Whoever was out there signaling for help, they would not be alone much longer. John Cena pushed through the last few bushes and prepared himself for whatever he was about to find. John reached the top of the hill and stopped to catch his breath. His lungs burned and his legs ached. He bent over with his hands on his knees, breathing hard. The forest was even thicker up here. Trees grew so close together that their branches formed a canopy overhead, blocking out most of the moonlight. He straightened up and looked around. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, showing more trees and bushes in every direction. Where was the signal coming from? John turned off his flashlight again and waited. His eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light. He could see the faint glow of stars through gaps in the trees above. An animal rustled through leaves somewhere to his left. His heart was still pounding from the climb, then he saw it. A flash of light very close now. It came from just beyond the next group of trees, maybe 50 feet away. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short. But something was different this time. The flashes were weaker than before, less bright. Whoever was making them was getting tired or running out of power. John turned his flashlight back on and moved forward quickly. He pushed through low branches that scratched his face and arms. His boots stumbled over hidden roots. He did not care. Someone needed help and they were close. He squeezed between 2 large tree trunks and suddenly found himself at the edge of a small clearing. John stopped and pointed his flashlight forward. What he saw made his blood run cold. An aircraft was tangled in the trees at the far side of the clearing. But it was not a normal plane. It was small, with an open cockpit and a single propeller. The frame looked like it was made of thin metal tubes and fabric. An ultralight aircraft, John realized. The kind that people used for recreational flying. But this one had crashed. The front was crumpled against a thick tree trunk. One wing hung at a broken angle. The other was completely torn off. And beneath the wreckage, pinned by a fallen tree branch, John could see a person. "Hey," John shouted as he ran across the clearing. "I'm here. Help is coming!"
He reached the crash site and dropped to his knees.
The pilot was a young woman, maybe in her 20s or early 30s. She wore a flight suit and helmet. Her face was pale and covered in sweat. Her eyes were half closed. In her right hand, she held a small rectangular object, a signal mirror. She had been using it to reflect the moonlight and create the SOS flashes. "Can you hear me?" John asked, setting down his flashlight so it illuminated the area. He gently touched her shoulder. The woman's eyes opened wider. She looked at John with confusion at first, then relief flooded her face. You saw..." Her voice was weak and scratchy. "I saw your signal. You did good. You did real good." John quickly looked over the situation. A large tree branch, probably knocked down in the crash, had fallen across the aircraft's frame. The frame had then collapsed, trapping the woman's left leg beneath twisted metal. He could see blood on her leg. "A lot of blood. What's your name?" John asked, taking off his backpack and pulling out his first aid kit. "Sarah," the woman whispered. "Sarah Mitchell." "Okay, Sarah, I'm John. I'm going to help you. But I need to see your leg. Can you tell me where else you're hurt?" Sarah tried to move and gasped in pain. "My leg, it's stuck. I can't feel my foot anymore." That was very bad news. John knew that if someone could not feel a body part, it might mean serious nerve damage or loss of blood flow. He needed to work fast. "How long have you been here?" John asked as he carefully examined the wreckage around her leg. 3, no, maybe 4 hours. I crashed right before sunset." Sarah's voice was getting weaker. "I tried to call for help, but my phone broke in the crash. I remembered the signal mirror in my emergency kit. That was smart thinking." John pulled out his phone and called 911 again. "This is John Cena again. I found the person. It's a crashed ultralight aircraft in the forest. Female pilot, mid-20s, trapped with a leg injury and significant bleeding. I'm about half a mile northeast of my house." "Sir, emergency teams are 15 minutes away from your location," the operator said. "Is the victim conscious?" "Yes, but fading." "How long until they reach us in the forest?" There was a pause. "The terrain is difficult. They estimate 30 to 40 minutes to reach your exact location." John felt his heart sink. He looked at Sarah. Her eyes were closing again. 40 minutes might be too long. "I'll do what I can," John said and ended the call. He turned back to Sarah and gently tapped her face. "Sarah, stay with me. Don't fall asleep. Talk to me. What were you doing out here?" Sarah's eyes opened slightly. "Wildlife photography. I take pictures from the air. Was trying to catch the sunset." "What do you photograph?" "Animals, rare ones. Florida panthers mostly." Sarah's words came slower. "Been tracking a mother with cubs. For months." John pulled out gauze and bandages from his first aid kit. He needed to stop the bleeding, but the leg was pinned. He could not reach the wound properly without moving the wreckage. He grabbed a water bottle and held it to Sarah's lips. "Drink this." Small sips. Sarah drank a little. Some water dribbled down her chin. "Cold," she whispered. So cold. John knew that was a bad sign. Sarah was going into shock. He took off his jacket and carefully spread it over her upper body, tucking it around her shoulders. The night was warm, but shock made people feel cold as their body struggled to maintain blood pressure. "Tell me more about the panthers," John said, trying to keep Sarah talking. "Did you get good pictures?" A tiny smile crossed Sarah's pale face. "Amazing pictures. The cubs were playing near a stream. I was circling back for one more pass when..." She trailed off. "When what happened?" Sudden wind gust, pushed me sideways. I tried to recover, but the tree..." Sarah coughed. "Hit the trees." John examined the tree branch pinning the wreckage more carefully. It was thick, probably 8 inches in diameter and heavy with leaves. It pressed down on the aircraft's frame, which had bent and collapsed around Sarah's leg like a trap. He tried to lift the branch. It did not move. He tried again, pushing with his legs and back. The branch shifted slightly but immediately settled back down when he stopped pushing. Sarah cried out in pain. "Stop, please." Sorry. John knelt back down beside her. He was strong, but not strong enough to lift both the branch and the bent metal frame. He needed tools or help, or both. He looked at his phone. Still 25 minutes until emergency teams arrived at his house. Then another 30 to reach this location. Sarah might not have 55 minutes, John. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now. Am I going to die? No, John said firmly. He took her hand in his. It felt cold. No, you're not going to die. I'm not going to let that happen. My camera, Sarah said suddenly. In the storage compartment. Behind the seat. Can you get it? John looked where she pointed. He could see a small compartment built into the aircraft frame. The door was bent but not completely crushed. Why, your pictures? The memory card. If I don't make it, someone should see those photos. The Panthers. People need to know they're still here. Still surviving. You're going to show people those photos yourself, John said. But he reached over and pried open the compartment door. Inside was a professional camera in a protective case. Somehow it had survived the crash intact. He pulled it out and set it beside his backpack. Thank you, Sarah breathed. Her eyes closed again. Sarah, stay awake. John gently shook her shoulder. Tell me about your family. Who's waiting for you at home? Sarah's eyes opened just a crack. My dad, he worries. Always tells me flying is too dangerous. He's going to be happy to see you again. He's going to say I told you so. The tiniest smile appeared on Sarah's face again. John kept checking her pulse. It was fast and weak. He adjusted his jacket around her, making sure she was covered. He shined his flashlight around the crash site, looking for anything he could use to help lift the wreckage. He found a sturdy branch about 5 feet long lying near the edge of the clearing. It could work as a lever, but he would need something to use as a fulcrum, a base point to push against. John looked at the trees around them. He looked at the wreckage. He looked at Sarah, getting paler by the minute. A crazy idea formed in his mind. It was dangerous. It might not work, but doing nothing was not an option. He knelt down next to Sarah again. Sarah, listen to me. I'm going to try something. It might hurt for a second, but I think I can get you free. Sarah's eyes focused on him with difficulty. Do it, just do it. John positioned the long branch under the tree limb that was pinning the wreckage. He found a solid rock to use as a fulcrum point. He tested the setup, pushing down on his makeshift lever. The tree branch lifted slightly. When I lift this, I need you to pull yourself backward if you can, John explained. Use your arms and your good leg. Can you do that? Sarah nodded weakly. John took a deep breath. He positioned himself at the end of the lever branch, ready to push down with all his strength. His muscles tensed. His hands gripped the rough bark. On 3, he said.
1, 2, 3.
John pushed down on the lever with everything he had. John pushed down on the lever branch with every ounce of strength in his body. His arms shook. His legs burned. The muscles in his back strained as he forced the branch downward. The tree limb began to lift. Slowly, inch by inch, the wreckage groaned and shifted. Metal scraped against metal. Sarah screamed in pain as the pressure on her leg changed. Pull, John shouted. Pull yourself back. But Sarah could not move. She was too weak. Her arms barely responded when she tried to push herself backward. John held the lever down, his whole body trembling with effort. But he could already feel it starting to slip. The rock he was using as a fulcrum was sliding on the soft forest ground. He could not hold it much longer. Sarah, you have to move. Sarah tried again. She managed to shift her body a few inches. But it was not enough. Her leg was still trapped. John's arms gave out. The lever branch slipped from his hands and the tree limb crashed back down. The wreckage collapsed again, settling back into the same position it had been before. Sarah cried out and then went silent. Her head dropped to the side. Sarah? John scrambled to her side and checked her pulse. Still there, but weaker than before. She had passed out from the pain. John stood up and ran his hands through his hair. His mind raced. The lever alone was not working. Sarah was too weak to pull herself free, and he could not lift and pull her at the same time. He pulled out his phone and called 911 again. This is John Cena. The victim has lost consciousness. How far away is help? Emergency responders are approaching your property now, sir. But they still need time to reach your location in the forest. Approximately 25 to 30 minutes. John looked at Sarah's pale face, at the blood that had soaked through his jacket covering her. 25 minutes might be 20 minutes too long. I need to try to free her myself, John said. Sir, I strongly advise against that. You could cause more injury. Please wait for the professionals. She might not have time to wait. John ended the call and knelt beside Sarah again. He gently patted her face. "Sarah, can you hear me?" No response. Her breathing was shallow and fast. Her skin felt cold and clammy. John made a decision. He had to try again. But this time, he needed to do it differently. He examined the wreckage more carefully, using his flashlight to see every detail. The tree branch was pressing down on the aircraft's frame. The frame had bent into a V shape, with both sides of the V pinning Sarah's leg between them. If he could lift the branch and spread the frame apart at the same time, he might be able to create enough space for Sarah's leg to come free, but he would need more leverage. More strength. John looked around the clearing again. His eyes fell on another branch, this one even thicker than the first. He ran over and tested its weight. Heavy, but he could move it. He dragged the second branch over to the crash site. Now he had two levers. He positioned them on opposite sides of the wreckage. One would lift the tree branch. The other would push against the bent frame, spreading it apart. It was a long shot, but it might work. John tested the setup several times, making small adjustments. He piled rocks under the lever branches to make better fulcrum points. He found flat pieces of wood to place on top of the rocks to keep them from slipping. Then he realized the problem. He only had two hands. He could not push down on both levers at the same time. Unless John looked at the thick lever branch positioned against the frame. If he could prop something heavy on it, create constant pressure while he worked the other lever. His backpack was not heavy enough. The first aid kit was too small. The camera would break. His eyes went to a large rock at the edge of the clearing. It was the size of a basketball covered in moss. John ran over and tried to lift it, heavy, very heavy. But he got it off the ground. He carried the rock back to the crash site, his arms straining. He positioned it carefully on the end of the lever branch that was pressed against the bent frame. The rock's weight pushed down on the lever, which pushed up on the frame. The metal groaned and shifted slightly. Good. It was working. Now John moved to the other lever, the one positioned under the tree branch. This was the one he would need to push himself. He took several deep breaths, preparing his body for the effort. "Okay, Sarah," he said to the unconscious woman. "I'm going to get you out of there." John gripped the lever branch and began to push. His muscles screamed in protest. Sweat poured down his face. The branch began to move downward. The tree limb lifted. At the same time, the rock pressing on the other lever was forcing the frame to spread apart. It was working. Slowly, but it was working. The space around Sarah's leg grew wider. The metal that had been crushing her leg was moving away. John pushed harder. His hand slipped on the bark. He adjusted his grip and pushed again. His vision started to blur from the effort. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Just a little more. Just a few more inches. The tree limb rose higher. The frame spread wider. Suddenly, John heard a snap. For a terrible moment, he thought the lever had broken. But then he realized what had happened. Sarah's leg had come free. John let go of the lever and lunged forward, grabbing Sarah under her arms. He pulled her backward, dragging her away from the wreckage. Behind him, the tree limb crashed back down. The frame collapsed with a screech of metal. The rock rolled off the other lever and thudded to the ground. But Sarah was clear. She was out. John gently laid her on the soft forest floor and immediately went to work. He grabbed his flashlight and examined her leg. It was bad. Very bad. Deep cuts, severe bruising, and the leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Definitely broken. He pulled out all the bandages and gauze he had. He worked quickly, wrapping the worst of the cuts to slow the bleeding. His hands moved with surprising steadiness despite his exhaustion. "Stay with me, Sarah," he said as he worked. "We're not done yet, but you're free. You're going to be okay." Sarah did not respond, but she was still breathing. John checked his phone for the time. The emergency responders should be at his house by now, but they still had to hike out to this location. At least 15 more minutes, probably 20. He looked at Sarah's leg again. The bleeding was slowing thanks to the bandages, but she needed real medical care. Soon. Then John had another terrible realization. The clearing where they were was too small for a helicopter to land. Too many trees surrounding it. The emergency teams would have to hike in, and then hike back out carrying Sarah on a stretcher. That would take even more time. Unless... John pulled out his phone and opened the GPS map. He studied their location. His house was half a mile to the southwest, but there was a fire access road that ran through the forest about a quarter-mile to the east. Emergency vehicles could drive on that road. If he could get Sarah to the road, the ambulance could meet them there. He looked at Sarah. Then he looked at the dark forest between them and the road. A quarter-mile carrying an injured person over rough terrain. John had carried people before, during his wrestling career and in training, but never someone who was really injured. Never in a situation where one wrong move could make things worse. But staying here meant waiting at least 20 more minutes. Sarah might not have 20 more minutes. John made his decision. He took off his shirt and used it as additional padding around Sarah's broken leg, trying to stabilize it as best he could. He tied it in place with strips torn from the bottom of the shirt. Then he carefully positioned himself beside Sarah. He had to be gentle but also efficient. He slid one arm under her knees, being careful with the injured leg. He slid his other arm under her shoulders. "Okay," he said out loud, talking to himself as much as to Sarah. On 3. 1, 2, 3, John lifted. Sarah was lighter than he expected, maybe 130 pounds, but any weight felt heavy when you had to carry it for a quarter-mile through a forest. He stood up slowly, adjusting her weight in his arms. He had her in what his military family called a fireman's carry position, but modified to protect her leg. Sarah's head lolled against his chest. She was completely unconscious now. John looked at his phone one more time, memorizing the direction he needed to go. East, toward the fire road. He put the phone in his pocket, made sure he had his flashlight, and took a deep breath. Then he started walking. The first 50 feet were not too bad. The ground was relatively flat, but then the terrain changed. The forest floor became rocky and uneven. John had to watch every step. A root caught his foot and he stumbled. He managed to stay upright, but the jolt made Sarah moan in pain even in her unconscious state. "Sorry," John whispered. "Sorry, I'll be more careful." He adjusted his grip and kept walking. His arms were already starting to ache. His back, strained from lifting the lever earlier, was sending sharp pains up his spine with every step. John pushed the pain aside and focused on moving forward. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Watch for rocks. Watch for holes. Keep Sarah's leg stable. The forest seemed to close in around them. Branches reached out like arms, scratching at John's bare shoulders and back. He turned his body to protect Sarah from the worst of it, taking the hits himself. Sweat ran into his eyes. He blinked it away and kept walking. He checked his phone. He had covered maybe 100 feet. Still a long way to go. John's breathing became labored. His arms trembled. His legs felt like they were made of lead, but he kept walking. Because that was what you did. When someone needed help, you helped them, no matter what it cost, no matter how much it hurt. His father had taught him that. And John was not about to let his father down. He was not going to let Sarah down. He pushed through a thick wall of bushes and suddenly found himself at the edge of a small stream. The water burbled over rocks, maybe 2 feet deep. John looked left and right. No easy way around. He would have to cross it. John stood at the edge of the stream, breathing hard. The water looked dark in the night, reflecting what little moonlight filtered through the trees. He could hear it moving over the rocks, a peaceful sound that contrasted sharply with the urgency of his situation. He tested the first rock in the stream with his boot. It wobbled slightly under his weight. Not good. If he slipped while carrying Sarah, they could both end up in the water. Her injuries could get worse. She could go into deeper shock from the cold water, but going around would add precious minutes to their journey. John made a choice. He would cross. He stepped carefully onto the first rock, keeping his center of balance low. His arms ached from carrying Sarah, but he held her firmly against his chest. The rock held steady under his weight. Next rock. This one was more stable. John moved his right foot to it and shifted his weight slowly. So far, so good. Third rock. Halfway across now. The sound of the water seemed louder here, rushing around his feet. Fourth rock. His boot slipped. John's heart jumped into his throat. He windmilled his arm for balance while keeping Sarah secure with the other. He managed to stay upright, but barely. Almost there, he muttered to himself. Almost there, last rock. Then solid ground on the other side. John stepped onto the bank and allowed himself a moment to rest, breathing heavily. His shirt was completely soaked with sweat now. His bare chest and shoulders were covered in scratches from branches. He checked on Sarah, still unconscious, but still breathing. He adjusted his grip on her and kept moving. The forest grew thicker. John had to squeeze between trees, turn sideways through narrow gaps. Each movement sent pain through his back and arms. His muscles screamed for rest, but he could not rest. Not yet. He pulled out his phone with one hand, a difficult task while carrying Sarah. The GPS showed he was getting closer to the fire road. Maybe 200 more feet. John put the phone away and pushed forward. His boot caught on something. He looked down and saw that he had tripped over an exposed tree root. He stumbled but caught himself against a tree trunk. Bad move. The impact jarred his back and suddenly a sharp pain shot up his spine. John gasped and nearly dropped Sarah. He leaned against the tree, breathing through the pain. Something had pulled in his back. A muscle, maybe worse. The pain was intense, radiating from his lower back up through his shoulders. John gritted his teeth. He could not stop now. He was so close. He pushed away from the tree and forced himself to keep walking. Each step sent waves of pain through his back. Each breath hurt. But he kept Sarah steady in his arms, kept putting one foot in front of the other. The ground began to slope upward. A hill. John almost cried out in frustration. Of course there was a hill. Why would anything be easy? He started to climb. His legs burned with effort. His back screamed in protest. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes. His vision began to blur. Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. The words became a mantra in his mind, matching the rhythm of his steps. Halfway up the hill, John's right leg gave out. He fell to one knee, barely managing to keep Sarah from hitting the ground. The pain in his back was overwhelming now, making it hard to think clearly. He knelt there for a moment, gasping for air. His whole body shook with exhaustion. Maybe he had pushed too hard. Maybe he should have waited for the emergency team. No, he could not think like that. Sarah needed help now. He was her only chance. John forced himself to stand. His back protested violently, but he ignored it. He shifted Sarah's weight in his arms and began climbing again. One step, another. His legs felt like rubber. His arms felt like they were on fire. His back felt like someone was stabbing him with hot knives, but he kept climbing. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes, John reached the top of the hill. And there, through the trees ahead, he could see it. A break in the forest. The fire road. New energy flooded through him. He picked up his pace, almost running now despite the pain. He crashed through the last line of bushes and stumbled onto the dirt road. He had made it. John carefully lowered Sarah to the ground, laying her on her back on the soft dirt shoulder of the road. He collapsed beside her, his chest heaving. Pain pulsed through his entire body. His back felt like it might never work properly again. But they were here. They were on the road where the ambulance could reach them. John pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called 911. "This is John Cena," he gasped into the phone. "I've reached the fire access road east of my property. I have the victim with me. We need an ambulance now. Sir, emergency vehicles are already en route to your property. I'll redirect them to the fire road. Stay where you are. They should reach you in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes. John could wait 5 minutes. He put the phone down and checked on Sarah again. Her pulse was still weak, her breathing shallow. But she was alive. They had made it. John sat beside her, his back against a small tree at the edge of the road. He could not stand up anymore. Could barely move. The adrenaline that had kept him going was wearing off, and the pain was becoming unbearable. He looked at Sarah's pale face in the moonlight. So young, a wildlife photographer with a passion for Florida panthers. She had taken beautiful pictures and had crashed trying to capture one more shot. She reminded John of people he had met over the years, people with dreams and passions who sometimes took risks to chase what they loved. Usually those risks paid off. Sometimes, like tonight, they did not. But she was going to be okay. John had made sure of that. He heard a sound in the distance. An engine, no, multiple engines. Growing louder, John tried to stand, but his back would not cooperate. He managed to get to his knees and pull out his phone, turning on its flashlight and waving it in the direction of the sound. Headlights appeared around a bend in the road. 2 vehicles, an ambulance in front, a fire truck behind it. They were here. The ambulance skidded to a stop next to them. Paramedics jumped out carrying equipment. John pointed to Sarah. "She's been trapped for hours. Crushed leg. Lost a lot of blood. She's been unconscious for about 20 minutes. The paramedics went to work immediately. They checked her vital signs, set up an IV, carefully examined her leg. John watched them work, feeling relief wash over him. A firefighter came over to John. "Sir, are you injured?" "My back," John said. "I think I pulled something. Let's get you checked out." The firefighter helped John move to the back of the ambulance where another paramedic examined him. "Can you stand?" The paramedic asked. John tried. With help, he managed to get to his feet, but the pain made him cry out. "Easy there. You may have strained your back muscles pretty badly. We should get you to the hospital too." "Not until I know she's okay," John said, nodding toward Sarah. The lead paramedic working on Sarah looked up. "We're transporting her now. She's stable but critical. You probably saved her life. If she had been out there much longer." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. They loaded Sarah onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. John watched as they worked, hooking up monitors, adjusting the IV, stabilizing her leg. "Sir, you should come with us," the paramedic said to John. "You need treatment for your back." John nodded. He let them help him into the ambulance. He sat on the bench seat, his back supported by the wall. Across from him, Sarah lay on the stretcher, surrounded by medical equipment. The ambulance doors closed. The siren started. They began moving. John watched the monitors showing Sarah's heart rate and blood pressure. The numbers were not great, but they were steady. The paramedics continued working, their movements efficient and practiced. "What's your name, sir?" one of the paramedics asked John. John Cena." The paramedic looked up with recognition. "The wrestler? The actor?" "Yeah, but tonight I'm just a guy who saw an SOS signal." "Well, John Cena, the guy did something pretty amazing tonight." John shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the paramedic said firmly. "Most people would have waited for help. You went into a dark forest alone, found a crash victim, freed her from wreckage by yourself, and carried her a quarter-mile through rough terrain to reach help. That's not what everyone would do. That's heroic." John did not feel heroic. He felt exhausted and in pain. But he looked at Sarah, saw her chest rising and falling steadily, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She was alive. That was what mattered. The ambulance raced through the night, siren wailing. John closed his eyes for a moment, finally allowing himself to relax. His back throbbed. His arms ached. His legs felt like jelly, but he had done it. He had answered the SOS call. And now both he and Sarah were in good hands. The paramedic placed a hand on John's shoulder. "You did good, man. Real good." John opened his eyes and managed a small smile. "Thanks." As they sped toward the hospital, John thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. If he had finished his workout 15 minutes earlier, he would not have been looking out the window at the right time. If he had not known Morse code, he would not have recognized the SOS signal. If he had decided to wait for emergency responders, Sarah might not have survived. Sometimes life came down to small decisions and lucky timing, but John also knew that luck was only part of it. His family had taught him to be prepared, to help others, to act when action was needed. Those lessons had made the difference tonight. The ambulance hit a bump in the road and John winced as pain shot through his back. It was going to take some time to heal, maybe weeks. His filming schedule would have to be adjusted, but as he looked at Sarah, alive and stable, he knew it was worth it. Every second of pain, every difficult step through the forest, all of it was worth this moment. The paramedic checked Sarah's monitors again and nodded with satisfaction. "She's holding steady. Good strong pulse now. You got her here just in time." John let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Just in time. The words echoed in his mind. In the distance, John could see the lights of the hospital growing brighter as they approached. Help was close, real help. Doctors and nurses and all the equipment needed to make sure Sarah recovered fully. His part was done. He had been the bridge between Sarah's desperate signal and professional medical care. And somehow, despite all the obstacles, despite the pain and exhaustion, he had been enough. The ambulance pulled into the emergency bay. The back doors flew open. Hospital staff were waiting, ready to take Sarah inside. As they pulled her stretcher out, Sarah's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. She looked around confused, then her gaze landed on John. "You came. she whispered, so quietly he almost did not hear it. I came, John confirmed. Then she was gone, wheeled quickly into the hospital. John tried to stand and follow, but his legs would not cooperate. The paramedics helped him onto a wheelchair. Easy there, hero. Your turn for treatment now. As they wheeled him into the hospital, John allowed himself to finally acknowledge how much pain he was in. But underneath the pain was something else, something that made all of it worthwhile. He had made a difference tonight. A real difference. Maybe the most important difference of his life. The hospital emergency room was bright and busy. Nurses and doctors moved quickly between rooms. Phones rang. Monitors beeped. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. John sat in a wheelchair in one of the treatment rooms waiting for the doctor to come back with his X-ray results. His back still hurt badly, but they had given him something for the pain. It helped a little. A nurse came in to check his vital signs. How are you feeling, Mr. Cena? Like I got hit by a truck, John admitted. But I've felt worse after some wrestling matches. The nurse smiled. Well, you're not as bad off as your friend. She's in surgery now. Broken leg, significant blood loss. But the doctors say she should make a full recovery thanks to you getting her here so quickly. John felt relief wash over him. She's really going to be okay? The orthopedic surgeon is one of the best. She's in good hands. The nurse finished checking his blood pressure and made a note on her clipboard. You know, you're quite the talk of the ER tonight. It's not every day someone carries a crash victim through a forest. I just did what I had to do. Maybe, but not everyone would have done it. The nurse patted his shoulder gently. Try to rest. The doctor should be back soon. After she left, John sat alone with his thoughts. The adrenaline was completely gone now. He felt drained, exhausted down to his bones. Every muscle in his body ached. His hands were scraped and cut from rough bark and rocks. His shoulders and back were covered in scratches from branches, but Sarah was alive. That made everything worth it. The door opened and a doctor walked in holding a tablet. She was in her 40s with gray streaks in her dark hair and kind eyes behind her glasses. Mr. Cena, I'm Dr. Martinez. I've reviewed your x-rays and the good news is nothing is broken. John felt tension leave his shoulders. And the bad news? You've severely strained several muscles in your lower back. The kind of strain that comes from extreme physical exertion while twisting and lifting. You're going to need rest. At least 3 to 4 weeks of limited activity. No lifting anything heavy. No intense workouts. And definitely no wrestling or stunt work. John nodded. He had expected something like this. What about physical therapy? We'll set you up with a therapist. You'll need it to prevent long-term issues. But I have to tell you, Mr. Cena, you're lucky. If you had pushed much harder, you could have caused serious damage to your spine. Herniated discs, nerve damage. You were right on the edge. I didn't really have a choice, John said quietly. Dr. Martinez looked at him with respect. No, I suppose you didn't. Sarah Mitchell is very lucky you were there tonight. She pulled out a prescription pad and began writing. I'm prescribing pain medication and muscle relaxants. Take them as directed. And seriously rest. Let your body heal. I will. Thank you, doctor. You can go home tonight, but you'll need someone to drive you. Do you have anyone you can call? John pulled out his phone. It was almost 1 in the morning, but he had friends who would come. Yeah, I've got someone. After Dr. Martinez left, John made a call. 20 minutes later, his friend Mike arrived at the hospital. Mike was another wrestler John had known for years, someone he trusted completely. Man, you look terrible, Mike said when he saw John. Thanks. I feel terrible. John accepted Mike's help getting out of the wheelchair and into a regular chair while they waited for his discharge papers. I heard what you did. It's all over the news already. Someone recorded the ambulance arriving at the hospital and posted about it online. The story spread fast, John groaned. I don't want this to be a big thing. Too late. You saved someone's life. That's a big thing whether you want it to be or not. A nurse brought John's discharge papers and instructions. Mike helped him walk out to the car. Every step was painful but manageable with help. The drive back to John's house was quiet. John stared out the window at the dark Florida landscape passing by. He thought about Sarah in surgery right now. He hoped she was doing okay. You want to talk about it? Mike asked. Not really, John said. Then, after a moment, I saw the SOS signal from my gym window. I knew someone needed help. I couldn't wait. I couldn't let someone die because I was too scared to go into the forest. You could have died out there yourself. Maybe, but I didn't. John shifted in his seat, trying to find a position that did not hurt his back. You know what kept me going? When I was carrying her and my body wanted to quit, I thought about my dad, about all the stories he told me about helping people in the military, about how you step up when someone needs you. I couldn't let him down, Mike nodded. Your dad would be proud, man. They arrived at John's house. Mike helped him inside and to his bedroom. John was so exhausted he could barely keep his eyes open. You need anything else? Mike asked. No, thanks for coming to get me. Anytime, brother. Get some rest. I'll check on you tomorrow. After Mike left, John lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. Despite the pain medication, his back still throbbed. But he was alive. Sarah was alive. They had both made it through. He fell asleep thinking about the signal mirror flashing in the darkness. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. A desperate call for help that he had been in the right place at the right time to answer. John woke late the next morning to his phone ringing. He groaned and reached for it on his nightstand. The movement sent pain through his back. Hello? Mr. Cena, this is Karen Williams from Tampa General Hospital. I'm calling about Sarah Mitchell. She asked me to contact you. John sat up quickly, ignoring the protest from his back. Is she okay? How did the surgery go? The surgery went very well. The doctors were able to repair the fractures in her leg. She'll need physical therapy, but they expect a full recovery. She woke up about an hour ago and immediately asked about you. She wanted to make sure you were okay. Relief flooded through John. Tell her I'm fine. Just a sore back. Nothing serious. She'd like to see you if you're up for a visit. Are you available to come by the hospital today? John looked at the clock. Almost noon. He had slept for nearly 11 hours. Yeah, I can come. Give me an hour. After ending the call, John carefully got out of bed. His back was stiff and sore, but the sharp pain from last night had dulled to a steady ache. He managed to shower and dress, moving slowly and carefully. Mike had left his car keys and a note saying John could use his car since John's was still at his house. John drove carefully to the hospital, every bump in the road sending twinges through his back. At the hospital, a nurse directed him to Sarah's room on the 4th floor. He knocked softly on the doorframe. Come in, a weak voice called. John entered. Sarah lay in the hospital bed, her left leg elevated and wrapped in a cast. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alert. V-lines ran to her arms. Monitors beeped softly beside the bed. When she saw John, her eyes filled with tears. You came, she said, her voice breaking. Of course I came. John pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down carefully. How are you feeling? Alive, thanks to you. Tears ran down her cheeks. The doctors told me everything. How you found me, how you freed me from the wreckage, how you carried me to the road. I don't even remember most of it. You were pretty out of it, John agreed. But you did the important part. You signaled for help. That mirror and your knowledge of Morse code saved your life. My dad taught me that, Sarah said with a small smile. He was in the Navy. He always said you never know when old skills might save you. Her smile faded. He's on his way here now from Georgia. I'm not looking forward to the I told you so about the dangers of flying. He's probably just grateful you're alive. Yeah. Sarah wiped her eyes. The doctor said if I had been trapped much longer, I would have lost my leg. Maybe my life. You saved both, John shook his head. I just did what needed to be done. No. Sarah's voice was firm despite its weakness. You went into a forest in the middle of the night alone to help a stranger. You risked your own safety. You injured your own back. That's not just doing what needed to be done. That's heroic. John felt uncomfortable with the praise. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who saw someone who needed help. A guy who actually helped. Do you know how rare that is? Sarah shifted in her bed, wincing slightly. I've been lying here thinking about it. If you had been 30 seconds earlier or later looking out your window, if you hadn't known Morse code, if you had decided to just call 911 and wait, any of those things and I'd be dead or missing a leg. But none of those things happened, John said gently. You're here. You're going to be okay. That's what matters. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my camera. Did you get my camera? It's safe. One of the firefighters grabbed it from the crash site. They brought it here. It's in your personal belongings. The memory card has the panther photos on it, the ones I was shooting when I crashed. The nurse mentioned you're a wildlife photographer. Florida panthers, right? Sarah's face lit up despite her exhaustion. Yes, I've been tracking this family for months. A mother and 2 cubs. They're so rare, John. Maybe only 200 left in the wild. Every photo helps raise awareness, helps protect them. Your photos will help. You'll make sure of that. I will. Sarah's eyes started to close. The pain medication was making her drowsy. Thank you, John, for everything. For coming when I needed help. For not giving up. For... She drifted off to sleep mid-sentence. John sat there for a few more minutes, watching her sleep peacefully. Then he quietly stood and left the room. As he walked down the hospital hallway, his phone buzzed with notifications. Messages, emails, social media mentions. The story had indeed spread online. News outlets were requesting interviews. People were calling him a hero. John ignored most of it. But one message caught his attention. It was from his father. Proud of you, son. You did the right thing. That's what matters. John smiled and typed back a quick reply. Then he headed home to rest his aching back and let his body heal. In a few weeks, he would return to his normal life. Filming, appearances, workouts. But this night would stay with him forever. The night he saw an SOS signal and chose to answer it. The night he learned that all his strength and training could be used for something more important than entertainment. The night he truly understood what his father had tried to teach him all those years ago. That being strong meant using that strength to help others. That being brave meant acting when someone needed you, even when you were scared. That being a real hero had nothing to do with movies or wrestling rings. It had everything to do with showing up when someone flashed 3 short, 3 long, 3 short into the darkness and hoped someone, anyone, would see and care enough to come. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the rescue. John sat in his living room, carefully doing the stretching exercises his physical therapist had assigned him. His back was healing well, though it still ached if he pushed too hard. The story of the rescue had taken on a life of its own. News channels had covered it. Social media had exploded with posts calling John a hero. His phone had not stopped ringing for days with interview requests, appearance offers, and messages from fans. John had turned down most of it. He did a few interviews where he mostly talked about Sarah and tried to deflect attention from himself. But what he really wanted to know was how Sarah was doing. Today, he was about to find out. He had received a call from Sarah asking if he could visit her at a rehabilitation center where she was recovering. She said she had something to show him. John drove to the center, a modern facility on the outskirts of Tampa. A receptionist directed him to the therapy wing on the 2nd floor. As he walked down the hallway, he could hear various sounds of recovery. People working with exercise equipment, therapists encouraging their patients, the determined grunts of people pushing through pain to regain their strength. He found Sarah's room and knocked. "Come in," her voice called, much stronger than the last time he had heard it. John entered and stopped in surprise. Sarah was standing by the window, leaning on crutches but standing on both legs. She wore athletic shorts that showed the surgical scars on her left leg, still red and angry looking but healing. Her face had color again. Her eyes were bright and alert. "You're standing," John said with a smile. "I'm standing." Sarah's grin was huge. "The doctor said I'm ahead of schedule. Another month and I might not even need the crutches." She made her way slowly to a chair and sat down, propping her crutches against the wall. Sit. "How's your back?" John took a seat on the small couch. "Getting better. Physical therapy is helping. I should be cleared to go back to work in another week or so." "That's great news." Sarah reached for a folder on the table beside her. "I wanted to show you something. Do you remember my camera? The one from the crash? The one with the panther photos?" "Yes." Sarah opened the folder and pulled out several large prints. She handed them to John. "These are the photos I took right before the crash. The ones I told you about?" John looked at the first photo and caught his breath. It showed a Florida panther mother lying on a flat rock beside a clear stream. 2 cubs played in the shallow water nearby, their spots still visible in their young fur. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across the scene. The detail was incredible. You could see every whisker, every ripple in the water. Sarah, "These are amazing. Look at the next one." The second photo showed one of the cubs mid-pounce, caught in perfect focus as it leaped at its sibling. The expression on its face was playful, tongue sticking out slightly. Pure joy captured in a single moment. John looked through the rest of the prints. Each one was stunning. Not just technically perfect, but emotionally moving. They showed these rare endangered animals living their lives, unaware they were being watched. Playing, resting, learning to hunt. These need to be seen by everyone, John said. They will be. Sarah's eyes shone with excitement. National Geographic bought the whole series. They're doing a feature article on Florida panthers. These photos will be the centerpiece. The article comes out next month. That's incredible. Congratulations. It gets better. Sarah leaned forward, her excitement building. The publicity from the rescue, from our story, it brought so much attention to my work. Conservation groups have been reaching out. Schools want me to speak. There's talk of a documentary about protecting panther habitats. That's what you wanted, right? To help protect them? More than I ever imagined possible. Sarah's expression turned serious. John, none of this would have happened if you hadn't saved my life that night. I would have died in those woods. These photos would have died with me. The work I'm going to do to help these animals, all of it exists because you saw that SOS signal and decided to act. John felt emotion rise in his chest. I'm just glad you're okay. I'm more than okay. My dad came and stayed with me for 2 weeks. We had long talks. He's not happy about the flying, but he understands why I do it. And he's proud of me. That means everything. I bet he was pretty scared when he heard about the crash. Terrified. But you know what he said when he met you? Sarah smiled. He said he could tell you were military family. Said you had that same quality his Navy buddies had. The ones who didn't hesitate when someone needed help. John thought about his father, his grandfather. I come from a long line of people who served, who believed in helping others. I guess some things get passed down. Well, I'm grateful they did. Sarah reached for another folder, this one thicker. There's something else. I wanted to wait until I could tell you in person. She pulled out papers and handed them to John. He read the top page. It was information about a new foundation. The name made him pause. The John Cena Wilderness Safety Foundation? I'm starting it, Sarah said firmly. With money from the National Geographic sale and donations from people who heard our story. The foundation will teach wilderness safety skills, first aid, navigation, survival techniques, and yes, Morse code. All the things that could help someone survive if they end up in a situation like I did. Sarah, you don't need to name it after me. Yes, I do. Because you're the reason I'm alive to start it. And because your story will help bring attention to it. People need to learn these skills. If I had known more about aircraft emergency procedures, maybe I wouldn't have crashed. If other people know what to do in an emergency, maybe they can save themselves or others. John looked at the papers. The mission statement talked about empowering people with knowledge and skills that could save lives. Training programs for hikers, pilots, campers, anyone who spent time in wilderness areas. Educational programs for schools teaching kids basic emergency skills. This is really impressive, he said. We're planning a launch event in 2 months. I'd like you to be there, to speak, to help us get the word out. Sarah's eyes were hopeful. Will you do it? Of course. Whatever you need. Sarah's smile was brilliant. Thank you. This foundation, this work, it feels like the right thing to do. Taking something terrible that happened and turning it into something that helps people, making sure my mistake might prevent someone else's. They talked for another hour. Sarah showed him more photos from her portfolio. She told him about her recovery timeline, the physical therapy exercises she hated but did anyway, her plans to get back to photography as soon as possible. I'm going to be more careful, she promised. Better equipment checks, better weather monitoring, never flying alone without a flight plan filed with someone. I learned my lesson. But you're not going to stop flying? John asked. No, the work is too important. Those panthers, John, they need advocates. They need people willing to go into their habitat and show the world what we're losing if we don't protect them. Her voice was passionate. I can't do that sitting in an office. I understand. Just be safe. I will. I promise. As John prepared to leave, Sarah stood up and grabbed her crutches. She made her way over to him, moving slowly but steadily. When she reached him, she set one crutch aside and wrapped her free arm around him in a hug. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. For coming into that forest. For not giving up on me. For carrying me when I couldn't walk. For saving my life. John hugged her back carefully. Thank you for not giving up either. For keeping that signal mirror flashing even when you must have thought no one would see it. For staying alive long enough for help to arrive. They pulled apart. Sarah had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "We make a good team," she said. "Yeah, we do." 2 months later, John stood on a stage at the Tampa Convention Center. Behind him, a large banner read, "John Cena Wilderness Safety Foundation Launch Event." The room was packed with people. News cameras lined the back wall. Sarah sat in a wheelchair at the side of the stage, her legs still healing but getting stronger every day. John had not wanted to make a big speech. He was not comfortable being called a hero. But Sarah had convinced him that his words could make a difference, could inspire people to learn these life-saving skills, could turn his experience into something meaningful. So here he was. "Good evening, everyone," John began. 3 months ago, I was finishing a workout in my home gym. I looked out the window and saw something strange, flashing lights in the forest behind my property. At first, I didn't know what they were. But then I recognized the pattern. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. Someone needed help. The room was completely silent, everyone focused on his words. "I want to tell you about the woman who made those signals. Sarah Mitchell is a wildlife photographer who has dedicated her life to protecting endangered species. She was taking photos of Florida panthers when her aircraft hit unexpected wind and crashed in the forest. She was trapped, injured, and alone, but she didn't give up." John looked over at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. Sarah remembered a skill her father had taught her, Morse code. She had a signal mirror in her emergency kit. And even though she was in terrible pain, even though she must have been scared, she kept flashing that SOS signal, over and over, for hours, until someone saw it. He paused. "I saw it because my father taught me Morse code when I was a kid. He was military. So was my grandfather. They believed in being prepared, in knowing skills that might save your life or someone else's life someday. I never thought I'd actually need to know Morse code. But that night it was the difference between life and death." John gripped the podium. "That's what this foundation is about. Not everyone will face a plane crash, but emergencies happen every day. People get lost in the woods, hurt on hiking trails, stuck in bad weather. This foundation will teach you skills that could save your life. First aid, navigation, survival techniques, emergency communication, skills that could turn you into someone's hero when they need help the most." He smiled. "People have been calling me a hero for the past 3 months. I appreciate it, but the truth is simpler. I just used the skills I had been taught. I saw someone who needed help and I acted. That's not special. Or it shouldn't be special. That should be normal." The audience was leaning forward, hanging on his words. Imagine a world where everyone knew basic emergency skills, where everyone could read a compass, apply a tourniquet, signal for help, start a fire, where everyone had the confidence to act in an emergency instead of freezing in fear. That's the world the John Cena Wilderness Safety Foundation wants to create. John gestured to Sarah. Sarah survived because she was prepared, because she had skills and tools that gave her a chance. She survived because someone saw her signal and understood it, and now she's taking that experience and using it to help others, to make sure that when the next person is in trouble, they have the knowledge and skills to save themselves, or to save someone else. He took a breath. "My father always told me that strength isn't just physical. Real strength is using what you have to help others. Real courage is acting when someone needs you, even when you're scared. The skills this foundation teaches won't just make you prepared. They'll make you capable, and being capable means having the power to make a difference when it matters most." John's voice grew stronger. "So I'm asking you to support this foundation. Take its classes. Learn these skills. Teach them to your kids. Because someday you might be the one who sees the SOS signal. You might be the one who has to act. And when that moment comes, I want you to be ready." The room erupted in applause. People stood. Cameras flashed. John stepped back from the podium, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the response. Sarah made her way to the front of the stage using her crutches. John helped her up to the podium. She gripped it with one hand, balancing her crutches with the other, and smiled at the crowd. 3 months ago, I was dying in a forest, she said simply. Today I'm standing here because one person saw my call for help and answered it. Because one person had the skills and the courage to do something about it. This foundation is my way of paying that forward. Of making sure that the next person who flashes an SOS into the darkness has a better chance of survival. Because someone somewhere will know what that signal means. And they'll come. More applause. Sarah's eyes met John's and they shared a look of understanding. Two people who had been through something terrible together and came out the other side, determined to make it mean something. After the formal speeches, John and Sarah spent hours talking with attendees. People signed up for classes, made donations, shared their own stories of wilderness emergencies and near misses. The energy in the room was electric, hopeful. Late in the evening, as the event was winding down, Sarah's father approached John. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and the straight posture of a military veteran. "Mr. Cena, I wanted to thank you in person." He held out his hand and John shook it firmly. "You saved my daughter's life. There's no way I can ever repay that. No repayment needed, sir. I did what anyone should do." "No." Sarah's father's voice was firm. "You did what few people would do. You put yourself at risk for a stranger. That takes character. The kind of character that used to be common in the service but seems rare nowadays. My father taught me well. My grandfather too. I can tell. You come from good people." He paused, emotion crossing his face. "When I got the call about the crash, when they told me Sarah was trapped in the forest, I thought I'd lost her. Thought I'd never see my little girl again. But you gave her back to me. So thank you. From a grateful father. Thank you." The two men stood there for a moment. Two people connected by a shared understanding of what it means to help others. Then Sarah's father pulled John into a quick, firm hug before stepping back and nodding once. John watched him walk back to Sarah, saw him put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, saw the love and pride in his eyes as he looked at her. That moment, John thought, was worth all the pain, all the exhaustion, all the fear of that night in the forest. Because Sarah was alive. She was with her father. She was doing important work that would help protect endangered animals and teach people life-saving skills. And all of it started because John had looked out a window at the right time and recognized 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short SOS. A simple signal that had changed 2 lives forever. As John drove home that night, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. He read it at a red light. "Thank you for answering my SOS. Thank you for being the kind of person who acts instead of waiting. Thank you for showing me that heroes are real. They're just people who choose to help when help is needed. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be more like that. More like you." John smiled and typed back, "You already are. You survived. You didn't give up. And now you're using your experience to help others. That's heroic. I'm proud to know you." As he pulled into his driveway, John looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. Somewhere out there, someone might be in trouble, flashing a signal, hoping for rescue. And maybe, just maybe, because of the work Sarah was doing, there would be someone ready to see that signal, someone prepared to act, someone who would answer the call for help. That was the real legacy of that night in the forest. Not the news stories or the praise, but the knowledge that their experience would ripple outward, creating more prepared people, more capable people, more people willing to step up when someone flashed SOS into the darkness. John went inside his house, his back only slightly sore now, almost completely healed. He looked at his gym, thought about that night looking out the window. Life could change in an instant. A flash of light could lead to a rescue. A rescue could lead to a foundation. A foundation could save countless future lives. All because one person saw a signal and decided to answer it. All because when someone called for help, someone else said, "I'm coming." And in the end, John thought as he prepared for bed, that was what truly mattered. Not fame or recognition, but knowing that when someone needed help, you were there. You showed up. You did what needed to be done. That was the real meaning of strength. The real definition of courage. And as John closed his eyes that night, he knew that if he ever saw another SOS signal, he would answer it again without hesitation, because that was who he was. Who his family had raised him to be, who he would always choose to be, someone who answered the call.